I never wanted to go in. That's not something I'm proud of saying out loud, but it's the truth. I stood outside the mouth of Sable Hollow Mine, wind snagging the edge of my jacket, eyes fixed on the jagged maw in the rock face. The boards that once barred it had long been pried loose, half-rotted and dangling from rusted nails like snapped bones. A crude, no trespassing sign clung to one, faded to near invisibility. Nature hadn't reclaimed the entrance. It had recoiled from it. My best friend since childhood, Cole, on the other hand, was already halfway inside. Headlamp sweeping through the gloom with the kind of cocky, performative confidence that made him irresistible to half our graduating class. "Come on, Sam," he called back, his voice echoing down the shaft, too loud in the stillness. "You said you wanted to see something real. Well, here it is. Real as hell." I hesitated, fingers tightening on the flashlight in my pocket. The chill wasn't just from the mountain air. There was something else here, older and scarier than cold. My grandmother used to tell stories about this place when I was little. She'd speak in a half-whisper and always cross herself when she said the mine's name. "Sable Hollow eats the souls of greedy men," she once muttered to me. "They still walk down there, searching for the gold that killed them." Back then I thought she was just trying to keep me out of trouble. Now I wasn't so sure. Still, I followed Cole. The darkness swallowed me within 5 steps. The beam from my flashlight stretched thin against the black, illuminating rotten timber supports and lengths of rusted track half buried in dirt. Cole was a few feet ahead, laughing at the sound of his boots crunching old gravel. His voice bouncing off the tunnel walls like some drunk specter. Felt wrong from the beginning. Not in the usual urban exploration way, with its thrill of decay and danger. This was different. The air itself had weight to it. The deeper we went, the more it pressed down. Not humid, not stale, but heavy, like breathing inside a temple soaked in mildew and regret. Cole stopped. "Check this out," he said, crouching beside a rusted metal box bolted to one of the old support beams. Inside, beneath layers of dust, was a single, faded sheet of paper. He read it aloud, mock serious. "Sable Hollow Survival Directives. Do not ignore these. Rule 1. Don't whistle in the mine. While they're sleeping, you're alive. Rule 2. Never step off the rail tracks. The dirt remembers your weight. Rule 3. If you see lantern light ahead of you, turn around. You are being led. Rule 4. If you smell sulfur in the air, lie down and do not breathe for 66 seconds. Rule 5. If the trolley moves on its own and stops near you, put something valuable in it. Rule 6. You may see someone who looks like your companion. Ask them what you ate for breakfast. If their answer is flesh, walk away without turning your back on them. Rule 7. If you reach the water table, do not look in. Do not speak to the reflections. Rule 8. If you hear singing from the lower levels, you are being hunted. Rule 9. No one ever leaves after midnight. If you are still here, hide. Cole barked a laugh. Jesus. Someone went all creepypasta down here. I didn't laugh. I looked at the sheet again, the faded ink, the way the paper curled at the edges. The metal box was bolted shut around it, as if the mine had tried to contain the warning. Cole snapped a photo of the page with his phone and waved me on. "You worried yet, Sammy boy?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him we should leave, but something deep in my gut told me it was already too late. We continued down the central shaft, the light behind us shrinking until it felt like memory instead of safety. My breath fogged the beam of my flashlight, and every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of dust motes hanging in the still air like suspended ash. Cole had gotten quieter, not out of fear, I think, but fascination. He'd stopped cracking jokes and started muttering observations to himself. "These tunnels go deeper than I thought," he said once, tapping his phone against the wall to mark something on his map app. "We're not even at the 2nd level yet." I didn't care what level we were on. All I knew was that the darkness here felt old and patient. The tunnel sloped gently down, curving slightly as if the mine was unsure of itself, unsure of where it wanted to lead. At one point, the track split into 2 veins, one heading deeper into shadow, the other blocked by a collapsed timber support and a mound of stone dust. Cole chose the open path naturally, and I followed, trying not to look at the collapse. Something about it felt recent. We passed old tools left behind in the dirt. A broken pickaxe, the warped head of a sledgehammer, even a dented tin lunch pail that still had a spoon resting on top, as though someone had just stepped away decades ago. Then Cole did something stupid. He whistled. It was a short, jaunty thing, 2 notes, barely a tune. A reflex, probably. He'd found an old brass lantern hanging from a hook and lifted it, letting out that whistle like a museum-goer admiring a dusty artifact. The sound didn't fade. It echoed and came back. I froze. The tunnel ahead of us was empty, but somewhere deeper in the dark, those 2 notes repeated, slower this time, as if chewed and spit out by something. Cole turned to me, blinking. "Did you hear that?" "Stop talking," I hissed. Another whistle, off-key this time, but unmistakably mimicking his. The mine had answered. For a moment, we just stood there, flashlights trembling, hearts beating too loud in our ears. Then, far ahead, there was a movement in the darkness, like the tunnel itself exhaled. I remembered Rule 1, don't whistle in the mine. While they're sleeping, you're alive. I grabbed Cole's arm. "We have to go back. Now." He pulled away. "Relax, man. It's just an echo. These places do that." That wasn't an echo. I could barely keep the panic out of my voice. That was something else. We heard it again, but this time it wasn't a whistle. It sounded more like breathing, heavy, rasping and wet, coming from somewhere just beyond the reach of our lights. Cole took a step forward, lifting his flashlight. "Who's there?" he called. I wanted to run. My brain screamed at me to grab him and run, but instead, I turned and looked behind us, because some buried part of me knew we weren't alone in either direction anymore. There were fresh footprints in the dust. Wide and long, they trailed up the tunnel behind us. Although a couple of moments ago there was nothing there. "Cole," I whispered, barely able to form the words. "They're awake." Somewhere, deeper in the mine, something started mumbling, low and arrhythmic, like the moan of rusted pipes under pressure. Whatever had answered that whistle had begun to move, and it was moving fast. Words were pointless. We ran. The sound of our boots clattering along the narrow steel rails said enough. Panic had turned bone deep. Cole's headlamp bobbed ahead of me, jerky and uneven, his breath ragged in the stale air. I kept my eyes on the tracks, trying not to think about the thing that had mimicked his whistle. It was still behind us. I could feel it, not the way you feel a person, but in the subtle wrongness that clings to a nightmare just before you wake up. We rounded a bend, one that dipped suddenly, and I nearly lost my footing on the slick iron rails. Cole skidded to a stop just ahead, his light hitting a wooden sign nailed to the rock wall. The words were worn, half illegible, but I caught a fragment. "Lower shaft, unstable, dead end." I gasped, trying to see around him. "No, it keeps going," he said, shining his light forward. "But it's narrower, and there's some kind of crack." The wooden plank beneath his foot snapped, and Cole stumbled sideways, off the rails. I saw it happen in slow motion. His boots slid into the loose gravel beside the tracks, and for one long second, nothing happened. Then the dirt moved. It rose up around his leg, not in a natural collapse, but as if it had been waiting. Cole screamed when the ground sucked his leg downward. I lunged, grabbing his arms and bracing my feet across the rails. "Don't move," I shouted, heart pounding in my throat. "Stay still." The soil was dragging him inch by inch, crawling up, wrapping around his thighs, pulling him into the earth like a hungry thing. "There's something under me," Cole shouted, his face pale in the lamplight. "It's grabbing Sam. It's grabbing me." "Stop struggling," I shouted, tightening my grip. "The Rule 2, never step off the tracks. The dirt remembers your weight." He thrashed anyway, and the ground responded. With a sudden jerk, he dropped another few inches. His flashlight fell, spinning as it struck the gravel, and for a second the beam caught something beneath the surface. Something pale, like a hand, bloated and knuckled, reaching from the soil. "No, no, no, help me, Sam. I am," I roared, planting one foot against a support beam for leverage. "Just hold on." With a groan of protest, the ground began to release him. Not all at once, but grudgingly, like it hated being denied. Inch by inch, I pulled him back, until at last he tumbled onto the rails, gasping and trembling. His legs slick with black, clay-thick mud. He lay there for a moment, panting. Then, slowly, he looked up at me. There were faces in the dirt. Am I losing my mind? I said nothing. I didn't need to. I'd seen them too. Just below the surface, distorted and still living, their mouths full of soil. We stayed on the rails after that, even when they creaked, even when they looked too rusted to trust. We walked as if they were the only thing keeping us alive. Maybe they were. Somewhere in the distance, the whistling started again. But this time, it didn't sound human at all. Cole limped beside me, one hand pressed to his thigh where the earth had gripped him, his face tight with something more than pain. The swagger had bled from his step. He kept his boots squarely on the rails now, his flashlight beam jittering just ahead of our path. "I didn't believe it," he muttered, voice hoarse. "Thought it was a joke. Some bullshit list some miner wrote to scare kids." I didn't say I told him so. I think he already knew it. The tunnel began to slope downward again, gradually but unmistakably. We passed through a narrow section where the walls seemed to press in closer with each step. And then, just as I was about to suggest we stop and rest, the tunnel opened up into a yawning chamber. The ceiling soared above us, lost in shadow. Our lights barely scratched the surface of the space, revealing ancient equipment, or carts long rusted to their axles, shattered crates, coils of wire like brittle vines. At the far end stood a massive stone wall, strange in its construction, seamless and smooth, as though it had been poured rather than built. In the middle of that wall was a hollow. Its opening was too perfect. The rock around it wasn't chiseled or drilled. It had been burned, as if bored out by something infernal and immense. The edges were scorched, and even from a distance I could see how the surrounding stone had buckled and blistered. There were no tracks leading to it, no tools near it, no signs it had ever been touched by human hands. Cole stepped toward it. "Wait," I hissed, but he didn't stop. He approached slowly, limping slightly, raising his headlamp to shine into the void. "Sam, it goes down. Way down. I think there's another system below this one." "Cole, that tunnel wasn't on the map. It's not in any records. It doesn't belong here. That's exactly why we should check it out." His voice held the edge of that old thrill again, the one he used to chase across rooftops, storm drains, and forgotten subway stations. I wanted to argue, but a strange sound silenced me. It wasn't loud, not at first. More like a hum or the resonance of a tuning fork against bone. It came from within the hollow, low and constant, so deep it felt like it wasn't heard but felt, down in the meat of the spine. Then came the breeze. It was cold and wet, touched with a smell like rust and something wrong. It slid past us like a tongue. My skin broke out in gooseflesh. Cole reeled back. "Jesus!" He was staring at the scorched rock. His hand reached out, hovering just above the rim of the tunnel. He turned to me, his eyes wide. "It's warm." I stepped forward and felt it too. Heat, radiating from the dark. The air here should have been cold, lifeless. But something alive was stirring inside that passage. "I don't like this," I said. "We should turn around. Go back the way we came." Cole didn't answer. He was looking down at the floor of the tunnel, at the tracks. Too thin, corroded rails ran into the strange tunnel, newly visible, though I could have sworn they hadn't been there moments ago. They weren't the same size or style as the ones we'd been following. These were narrower, almost dainty, the metal a dull, bone-colored hue. "They weren't here before," I whispered. Cole gave a slow nod. "Yeah," he said, voice tight. "That's the part that scares me." We stood there, two tiny specks in the belly of the mine, staring into the mouth of a tunnel that hadn't existed until it wanted to. We didn't enter the tunnel. Not right away. Something about its unnatural heat, the impossible tracks, that bone-deep hum had unsettled even Cole, and I'd never seen him like this before. He muttered something about marking it, pulled a length of neon tape from his pack, and tied it to a corroded pipe near the scorched rim. "Just so we can find it again," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. We moved on, deeper into the main shaft, putting distance between ourselves and the hollow that hadn't existed an hour ago. The tracks under our feet, once rusted and warped, now gleamed in patches. The wood beneath them was damp and black. We walked in silence for what felt like a long time. My legs ached. My mouth was dry. I tried to figure out how far we'd wandered from the entrance, when I saw a light. It flickered just ahead, far down the shaft. Pale yellow, swaying slightly, as if carried. "Someone's down here," Cole breathed beside me, straightening. "A foreman maybe, or another explorer." "No one else came in," I whispered, throat tight. "We would have seen them. We would have heard." But Cole was already moving, his limp forgotten, striding along the rail lines like a man walking toward salvation. The light continued to bob ahead, retreating deeper with every step, always just out of reach. "Cole, wait." He didn't. My flashlight beam skittered across damp walls and fractured stone as I hurried to catch up, boots clanging softly against the iron track. We followed that pale lantern, the walls pressing tighter, the air growing colder now, paradoxically sharp after the heat of the strange tunnel. The light kept moving. Sometimes it turned corners before we reached them. Sometimes it lingered in open spaces, flickering like it might vanish at any moment. Once I thought I saw a shape behind it, a shadow that didn't belong to the flame. But when I blinked, it was gone. We must have walked a mile. Then the light stopped. It hovered at the end of a straightaway, bobbing gently, and I felt it. An overwhelming pull, as though it wanted me to rise and walk into it. Cole was already stepping forward again. The words came back to me, cold and clear, slicing through the haze of my thoughts. Rule 3. If you see lantern light ahead of you, turn around. You are being led. I reached out and grabbed Cole's arm, fingers digging into his jacket. He turned. "What?" "We're being led," I said, voice low and urgent. "This isn't random. That light, it belongs to something evil that lurks in this mine." He looked past me, toward the flame. For a moment, his expression changed, like something had seized him. His pupils dilated, jaw slackened. He took a step forward, eyes wide and unblinking. I slapped him. It wasn't hard, just enough to bring him to his senses. He blinked once, twice, and then stumbled back like waking from a sleepwalk. "Damn, what the hell?" The light flared closer. We hastily walked in the opposite direction. It followed with cruel patience, appearing and disappearing along the track behind us. Each time we crossed a threshold, I expected to see it ahead of us again. But it never took the lead. It just stayed close enough to whisper dread into the backs of our necks. Only when we passed through a narrow breach with collapsed beams and mangled rail, barely wide enough for one person, did it stop. The light hovered at the edge of the passage, just beyond the twist in the tunnel. It pulsed once, then flickered and vanished. Cole collapsed to the ground, panting, sweat pouring down his forehead. "What the hell is this place?" he muttered. I didn't have an answer. I knew one thing. Rules were our only key to survival. For a long time, the only sound was our breathing, punctuated by the distant drip of unseen water. Cole leaned back against the tunnel wall, eyes half shut. The encounter with the light had hollowed something out of him. Some unshakable confidence I'd always resented and admired in equal measure. "We should go back," he muttered eventually, though the words lacked direction. "Get out before we hit midnight." I nodded, but I knew better. Whatever path we'd taken had twisted behind us, rerouted itself. The tracks beneath us vibrated faintly, just enough to notice if you were paying attention, as if the mine were still breathing deep below. Eventually, the shaft forked again, this time into 3 directions. The center tunnel was partially collapsed, with splintered beams jutting like broken bones. Cole gestured toward the left, but I paused. There was something in the air, a sharpness, acrid and unmistakable. Sulfur. It crept in like a tide. First as a faint tickle in the nostrils, then a bitter sting, burning slightly at the back of the throat. Cole didn't seem to notice it yet. I grabbed his shoulder and whispered, "Rule 4. His head tilted, confused. "What?" "Sulfur." I pointed to the air, already shimmering faintly in our flashlight beams. "Lie down. Don't breathe." It hit him too. His nose wrinkled. "Shit, you serious?" We dropped to the ground, cold stone biting through our jackets. I pulled my collar up and pressed my face into the fabric, willing myself not to inhale. Cole mimicked me, though his hand trembled against the floor. First, nothing happened. Then came the sound, wet and rattling, like lungs full of tar dragging in breath. The air grew hot, dense with pressure. Something passed over us. I felt it. The presence was vast, shambling, its motion slow and agonizing, like muscle and bone forced into unnatural movement. The earth groaned beneath it. My lungs screamed. I counted the seconds in my head, slow and steady, grounding each one with the beat of my heart. 42. 43. Behind us, the thing paused. I heard a sniffing sound. Cole shifted ever so slightly. His foot scraped stone. The thing stopped. I bit down on my sleeve, holding my breath until black spots danced at the corners of my vision. Movement continued down the tunnel, dragging its sound with it, until the air thinned and the pressure eased, like a lid lifting off a boiling pot. 66. 67. Only then did I let the breath out, slow and shuddering. Cole gasped beside me, coughing quietly. "What was that?" he rasped. "I don't know," I said, "but seems like it didn't see or smell us, because we followed the rule." I realized how wet the floor was beneath us when we stood up. My sleeve came away streaked with something dark and thick. We moved on, faster but quieter now, our footsteps synchronized. "Do we go back?" Cole asked, voice thin. I shook my head. "I don't think there's a back anymore." The tunnel had lengthened in front of us. The air buzzed faintly with leftover energy. There, at the far edge of our light, was an empty trolley sitting motionless on the rusted tracks. Its iron frame was blackened with age, one wheel slightly warped, the cart itself no larger than a wheelbarrow and just as primitive. Beneath the dust and flakes of oxidized metal, faint glyphs were etched along the side, spirals and slashes that pulsed in. Cole stopped short. "That wasn't there before." "No," I said. "It wasn't." Before either of us could move, it did. With a soft whine from the warped wheel, the trolley shuddered, then rolled forward, as though guided by some buried incline we couldn't perceive. It squealed to a stop directly in front of us. Rule 5 surged into my mind. If the trolley moves on its own and stops near you, put something valuable in it. "Not a toll," I murmured. "A gift, or an offering." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a dented brass Zippo. "Got this from my dad. Used to say it was lucky." I looked at him sharply. "You sure?" Cole hesitated, his thumb still resting on the lid. The flame hadn't been used once tonight. His bravado had always burned brighter than butane. He exhaled and tossed it into the cart. The trolley sat for a beat, as if considering the item in silence. Then it lurched, shaking once violently. The Zippo inside vanished in a flash of darkness, like something swallowed it from below. "Jesus," Cole muttered. A rising, resonant hum filled the tunnel. The trolley began to roll again, this time backward, receding into the shadows from where it had come. The tracks ahead lit up, faint lines of pale blue light etching a path forward, illuminating just enough to see the way ahead, like phosphorescence trickling through veins in rock. Cole glanced back once. "So what would have happened if we hadn't given it anything?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to guess. The tunnel bled into quiet for what felt like miles, the glow along the tracks dimming as though it grew cautious the farther we walked. At some point, I stopped trying to keep track of how far below ground we were. My sense of time and distance had been steadily dissolving since the trolley incident. Then the sound of water found us. It started as a steady drip, but as we descended, the rhythm multiplied. Trickles became streams, streams became a slow-moving underground river we couldn't yet see. The temperature dropped inevitably, like falling through the layers of a dream towards something buried at its heart. Cole muttered, "There's no way this place isn't flooded by now." The tunnel narrowed into a low stone passage, hunched and wet. Every surface glistened with condensation. Our footsteps squelched now, water seeping over the edges of the tracks, rising gradually, swallowing the wooden ties one by one. Around a bend, we found a chamber, vast and circular. The tracks disappeared into it, vanishing beneath a glass-still pool that stretched from wall to wall. The ceiling soared out of view, lost in darkness beyond the reach of our headlamps. It felt like standing inside a temple carved from stone and grief. There, across the water, lining the far edge was dozens of dark, upright tunnels. Cole approached the edge of the submerged tracks and peered down. I hissed, "Don't." He glanced back. "It's just water." Rule 7 echoed in my mind like a scream behind a door. If you reach the water table, do not look in. Do not speak to the reflections. He crouched. "You don't see that?" I stepped forward then, just enough to see what he was talking about, just enough to feel the pull. The water was impossibly clear. Beneath the surface, the tracks continued across the chamber like a buried railway, pristine and unworn. I saw myself, not reflected above the waterline as you might expect. My reflection stood beneath the surface, upright on the mirrored track below, feet planted on submerged stone. And it was watching me. Its eyes were mine, but brighter, lit from within like candles burning low in twin skulls. His mouth moved in silence. I stepped back. "Sam." Cole's voice trembled. "Mine's doing it too. Don't talk to it." "I didn't mean to," he said, shivering. "It just asked. Sounded like me." "Don't answer." The reflection opened its mouth again. This time, I heard something deep inside my thoughts, a suggestion sharp as a splinter. "We remember what was taken. Give it back." I bit my tongue until I tasted iron. Cole swayed beside me. "It said something about my mom's necklace, the one I pawned." The surface of the water began to ripple, circles spreading from our mirrored selves. I grabbed his sleeve. "We have to go. Now." "But what if that's the way forward?" "There is no forward here. This is a trap," I said. The glow along the tracks behind us flickered, then bloomed again with new urgency, lighting the path back like a fuse catching fire. Behind us, water lapped up over the stone lip. I didn't look back. Cole hesitated. His reflection reached out from beneath, fingertips brushing the underside of the water's surface. The light touched Cole's shoes and he snapped free. We ran. Not fast. Fast would have caused panic, and panic would have led to mistakes. Back in the tunnel, the water sound faded. But even as the glow dimmed behind us and silence returned, I couldn't forget those eyes. Mine, but emptied of self, waiting for me to break Rule 7. Cole hadn't spoken since the water table. He moved ahead of me now, silent. His shoulders hunched like he was expecting something to fall on him. I didn't press him. There was a tension in the mine, a static charge in the rock, and speaking felt like tempting it. We rounded a bend where the tunnel split in two, and that's when we heard a high, thin voice. Faint at first, barely distinguishable from the distant creaks and groans of the earth above us. It was singing. The melody was old. Not in the way a folk tune might be, but older in shape. The notes didn't rise and fall so much as slither, slipping between pitches that shouldn't exist in human music. It crawled down my spine and nestled somewhere deep in the hindbrain. Cole turned toward the sound. "Don't," I whispered. "Don't listen. Rule 8. You hear singing from the lower levels. You're being hunted." He blinked, confused. "No, it's just, it sounds like..." He trailed off, his expression changed. "My sister," he said quietly and started walking toward it. I lunged, grabbed his arm. Cole, stop. That's not her. That's not anyone. You know this. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. From some pressure deep behind them, some invisible grip tightening slowly around his skull. It's her song, he murmured. She used to sing it when I was sick. His body jerked forward, not entirely under his own power. No, I said. That's what it wants. It's bait. I pulled him back, hard, slamming him against the tunnel wall. The singing faltered for just a moment, like a record skipping. Then it changed. It was a harmony now, low and wet, layered beneath the original melody. The light along the tracks behind us blinked out, one by one moving toward us. Cole screamed. From the blackness, I saw it. A pale shape unfolding from the lower shaft like a spider made of famine and chalk. No face, no features, just wet muscle stretched over wrong bones, limbs too long, joints bending wrong. Its head jerked in spasms toward the song it had made, and its body followed. I ran, but Cole's foot caught the edge of the track. He fell, hit the stone with a grunt, rolled. Before I could reach him, the thing did. It moved fast, faster than weight or friction should allow. It didn't make a sound. No screech, no thunder of limbs. Just the singing, swelling louder now, coming from its opened ribcage. It grabbed Cole by the leg. He screamed, kicked at the stone, eyes wild, scrabbling backward as the thing began to drag. Sam! I dropped to my knees, grabbed his hands. The creature hissed and its grip tightened. Cole's fingers slipped. Don't let go! He shrieked, nails digging into my palms. I won't, I shouted back. Hold on, just hold. The light flickered once more, and then he was gone, yanked down into the dark like a rag doll into floodwater. His scream didn't echo. It was cut off, swallowed, replaced by the song again. I didn't move for a long time. The tunnel pulsed dimly now, sickly and slow. I stared into the hole where he'd vanished, where the creature had gone. I thought maybe I'd hear him again, some last gasp of sound. His voice calling my name, even twisted by whatever lived in those depths. But the mine had taken him, and the silence that followed said he wasn't coming back. I rose, wiped blood from my palms, and kept moving. There wasn't much else to do. The track stretched forward in a suffocating hush, winding deeper into the gut of the mine like a vein no longer meant for blood. The walls, once jagged and trembling with age, had smoothed into a texture similar to wax. In places, I could see impressions in the stone. Shapes that looked almost like hands, mouths, things caught mid-scream before they were pressed into silence. Somewhere behind me, the faint remnants of the song still lingered, but it had thinned, unraveling in the cold air like frayed silk. It didn't matter. I wouldn't follow it. Never. Still, I kept hearing the absence of Cole's voice. I told myself it was grief, that shock plays tricks on the mind, that the mind warps sound and memory the way heat warps air. But then I saw him, up ahead, just past a bend where the track buckled slightly. There he stood, Cole, arms limp at his sides, head tilted a fraction too far to the left, staring straight at me. I froze. Everything inside me twisted violently at the sight. A hope like claws tore upward through my ribs, screaming that maybe he'd escaped, fought the thing off, found a passage back up. But I remembered the rule. Rule 6. You may see someone who looks like your companion. Ask them what you ate for breakfast. If their answer is flesh, walk away without turning your back on them. He didn't move, just stood there, pale under the guttering overhead light, dirt smudged on one cheek. His eyes were wide, lips slightly parted, curled at the edges. My throat went dry. Still, I stepped closer. Cole, I said as steadily as I could. What did we eat for breakfast? A pause. Something moved behind his eyes, like a ripple under skin. Then he blinked. You had cereal, he said softly. I had. The pause stretched. I took a half step back. His lips twitched. I had flesh, he whispered. I felt it. Not fear, not even dread, but a cold certainty, like the instant before a car crash. That weightless realization that what's coming can't be undone. The thing that wore Cole's shape grinned wide now. The skin around its mouth split slightly, like old seams giving way. Behind its teeth, something pulsed and shifted, wet and twitching. I turned and walked. Every instinct screamed to sprint, to flee, to put as much distance between me and that grinning imitation as possible. But I remembered the rest of the rule. Walk away without turning your back on them. That's what I did. My boots found the track with painful care, heel to toe. I kept my body facing forward, but my head slightly turned, eyes locked on the thing in my periphery. It followed. The light flickered above it, as though the bulbs themselves were recoiling. I tried not to blink and just walked. Suddenly, with a sound like rust peeling from metal, that doppelganger stopped. The tunnel narrowed ahead, leading into a new chamber carved directly into the bedrock. Something old was painted on the walls there, symbols scrawled in ochre. I passed into the next corridor, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my teeth. I didn't look back, even when the light behind me shattered. Even when the scraping began again, soft and eager. Even when it whispered my name. Sam! No, it wasn't him. Time had long since dissolved into something oily and unreliable, slipping through my fingers no matter how tightly I tried to grasp it. My phone was almost out of juice. It read 2:12 a.m. Rule 9 flashed in my mind, bright and immediate. No one ever leaves after midnight. If you are still here, hide. My skin prickled. Somewhere behind me, I thought I heard a distant chime once. Then silence. I was still on the track, barely. It had narrowed into what looked like an old transport corridor, ribbed with ancient wooden supports that leaned at sick angles, half-eaten by rot. Darkness bled through the cracks between the planks. Across the wall ahead of me, I saw the shadow slither, tall and jointless, like a marionette dancing without strings. I dropped to my knees and crawled off the track, ducking behind a broken mining cart rusted into the stone. My breath came shallow and uneven as I curled myself into the hollow behind it, spine pressed against cool rock. I waited. The scraping came first, a slow, rhythmic drag, like something pulling too many limbs across gravel. Then the breathing, wet, ragged, impossibly close, inflating something that should have stayed deflated. I risked a glance and saw a pale creature that was no longer pretending to be Cole. It wore no skin at all now, just glistening muscle over bone, strands of sinew twitching with every movement. Its head was bulbous, stretched with puckered sockets where eyes should have been. Inside those hollows, tiny white shapes shimmered, each blinking out of sync like trapped insects. Its arms bent wrong, backward and inward, ending in fingers too long, tipped with blackened nails that pulsed faintly. But what froze my breath in my throat wasn't its form. It was the sash it wore, tied crudely around its chest, stitched from old cloth, the kind used by foremen generations ago, embroidered with a company crest half-faded by time, and a name, stitched with care, Mortimer Tellon. I knew that name. Cole had found it in the ledger we'd mocked. The first mine captain, vanished with 17 workers in 1886 after descending too far. Beneath Sable Hollow, below even the mapped shafts, there was something else. They had called it a vein, but it had never pulsed with, or what they struck wasn't gold, silver, or coal. It was a seam in the world, and when they opened it, something seeped out. I assume Tellon had been the first to change. The mine had kept him, and over time, it had made him into something that couldn't die. The creature shifted, head swiveling unnaturally. I pressed tighter into the rock, barely daring to breathe. I could hear something inside it now, something moving just under its ribcage. A second mouth? A heartbeat? I couldn't tell. Its head turned toward the tunnel mouth, as if listening to something deeper, and it moved on, crawling like a devious hunter. I didn't move for a long time after, even after the sound was gone, and the pressure in the air lifted. Only when a faint wind brushed my cheek did I dare to uncurl. Every rule burned behind my eyes like scripture seared into flesh, each one carved from a mistake someone else hadn't survived. And now I understood the purpose, the hidden logic threading through them. They were the only way out. My lamp had died minutes ago. I guided myself by instinct, by touch, by the occasional glimmer of bioluminescent moss pulsing along the walls. I found the rail again by sound. My boot hit metal and the dull clink echoed like salvation. I followed it uphill, hugging the track as though it were holy, even as the mine around me shifted. The walls groaned. Supports flexed above me, wood bending in slow, weeping arcs. At one point I passed a tunnel I knew hadn't been there before. Its entrance round and wet, its walls glistening. From its mouth, wind blew outward, warm and thick with the copper stink of blood. I didn't enter, didn't look inside. I followed the rules and stayed on the track. Time collapsed. 10 minutes, an hour, a day? I don't know. All I know is that eventually, blessedly, I saw it. The shaft, not the deep one. Not the cursed vertical drop from which the crawler had come, nor the winding stairs of rust and bone that led to the old sealed vaults. No, this shaft was the one we'd first descended. The original access tunnel, the one with the ladder. I stared up at it. It looked impossibly high, impossibly narrow. And from below me, I heard the singing, lulling, almost beautiful. I didn't recognize the words, but the meaning passed beneath language, settling into the spine, into the marrow. It was calling for me, promising relief, promising coal. I climbed, hand over hand, step by agonizing step. My muscles screamed, torn and aching, fingertips bleeding from worn edges of rusted rungs. Below me, the darkness rose. It knew I wouldn't make it. It had waited for others. But I had an incredible thirst for life and an unwavering will. I kept climbing. My arms gave out, my boots slipped and I dropped 3 feet, scraping my shin open to the bone. I didn't scream. I prayed. Not to God. He wasn't here. I prayed to the mine, to whatever old blood-soaked entity slumbered beneath Sable Hollow and kept its books in bones. I reached the top just as I felt the breath on my ankles. It was that close. I rolled out of the shaft, gasping, sobbing, the cool night air biting into my lungs like knives. I lay on the dirt, looking up at the stars. Stars. I can't believe real stars. I don't remember walking to the truck. Don't remember starting the engine or finding the key that must have still been in my pocket. I remember only the gravel under my tires as I tore out of there. The way the rearview mirror flickered with something pale and grinning, watching me leave. I didn't know how I was supposed to look into Cole's sister's eyes. I couldn't save him, it was my fault. He was her only family until now. Like Cole before that fateful trip to the mine, she didn't believe in the paranormal. That's why I couldn't tell her the truth. The truth about the disfigured miners, about the hideous pale creature that buried Cole in the depths of Sable Hollow. The mine is still closed, quarantined by rusted gates and overgrown warning signs. But no one guards it. No one dares stay past dusk. Many locals just nod when you mention Sable Hollow and change the subject. I can't get over what happened. At night, I often wake up to the sound of singing, as if it were coming from underground. And sometimes, I swear to God, when I look in the mirror, I see Cole in the reflection. Pale, stitched together from scraps of flesh, begging for help.